tasked with assembling an elite team to travel through time. All your worlds are about to change.
Hey guys, Nick here, and welcome back to another Legends of Tomorrow episode review. My thoughts on tonight's episode of Legends of Tomorrow, which is part 4 of the 4-part DCTV crossover, with this episode being the finale of the crossover. And God, this was an awesome episode. This episode and the Flash episode of the crossover were exactly what I wanted when they announced this 4-way crossover, and what the kind of vibe I was expecting from it and what kind of story I was expecting from it. It was great from start to finish. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people were upset with the lack of a crossover really in the Supergirl episode, and even on iTunes, because I didn't watch the episode live, unfortunately, so I bought the episode on iTunes and I watched it that way. Even then it said the 3-way crossover instead of 4-way, because it really started on Flash, not really Supergirl, because they even show the scene from Supergirl in the Flash episode anyway. So a lot of people were upset because they watched Supergirl just to watch the crossover, and it ended up being just a regular superhero or Supergirl episode. So of course people watched it out of context, didn't know what was going on, and I can understand why certain people are upset. But at the same time, for me, as a Supergirl fan, and if you guys watch my videos, you guys know I review Supergirl every week. So to me, I thought it was a great Supergirl episode, but it was obviously mismarketed since it wasn't really a crossover episode, except for the last 20 seconds at the end, which they ended up showing in the Flash episode anyway. But so to get back into what I loved about this episode, this episode was just so much fun, and this whole crossover, even with the Arrow episode from the night before, everything. The whole crossover experience to me was handled amazingly well. There were so many good character moments, and it's not like each episode of the show, so with the Flash and obviously with this episode of Legends of Tomorrow, they didn't feel like episodes of their respective shows. It felt like a continuing story throughout. It didn't feel like they veered too much from the main story. With the Arrow episode, it had to deal with the fact that it was Arrow's 100th episode as well as the crossover. So they had to combine both elements into that. So that's why they had the Dominators putting a lot of the Arrow characters under, and putting in this fantasy reality that that Oliver and all of them were under. So that took up a huge majority of the episode. And yeah, you still had some of the new Team Arrow as part of the crossover, and they didn't really do anything to really. But this episode, the Flash episode, really felt like what I wanted from the show, and it was just so much fun. And that's the thing I can take away from this whole crossover experience. I think this whole crossover has been my favorite so far, because it has so many characters and it didn't feel overcrowded really. It was exciting to see all these characters share the same screen together, even though we didn't see Nate and Maya and the Flash crossover episode, and we didn't see Wally or too many Flash characters in this episode. Even though there were some characters I wanted to see more of, I still walked away being I feel like every character got to shine at least somewhat. And this being the finale, it was so action packed, and just there's so much going on in this episode, from Stein still doing with the revelation that his aberration that he created in 1987 when he spoke to his younger self led to him having a daughter unexpectedly. So, and the actress who's playing his daughter is confirmed to have a recurring role in Legends of Tomorrow now, so she's sticking around. So I'm curious as to how they're gonna incorporate her into the show. And for anyone who's watched Orange is the New Black, she had a small role in that this past season. And it's only a 1-episode stint as the younger version of one of the characters. But so that's where, if you guys recognize her, that's where she's from. And so seeing Stein kind of deal with that, I thought was really interesting. Because, we all know kind of how Stein is and how he's really he can be arrogant and selfish sometimes. So the way he handled, dealing with his daughter was a really selfish thing what he was doing, and he said that she wasn't even a real person, which was really messed up. But I like seeing him struggle with that, and finally by the end of the episode, when they're trying, when he's telling Jax to transmutate the metabomb, and saying like, what, I have a daughter out there, you have to do this for her. I thought that was a little cheesy, but it was nice seeing him start from the episode going, oh, she's not even real, to accepting the fact that he has a daughter and he's gonna have to live with that choice now. And I thought it was a cool thing to deal with. Another thing I really liked was kind of seeing, going back to 1951 to capture a Dominator, and in that when Nate, Amaya, Cisco, and Felicity all go to 1951, I thought it was cool the fact that they really ended up saving the Dominator from those government agents, and I like how they tied in that one government agent guy from the past, and they kept him in the present to kind of be like an antagonistic figure for all the teams throughout this whole crossover event. And I thought it was cool because the Dominators, for as much as they could, they looked almost exactly like their comic book counterparts, at least as much as they realistically could on a CW budget. I thought they looked great. This is the first episode that the Dominators, you felt that they were more than just bad guy aliens, that there was more to them. They were there to kind of save humanity from metahumans, and in a way save humanity from themselves, in a way that makes them more sympathetic villains, even because they're not necessarily trying to do the wrong thing. They're trying to save other worlds and their own from the threats that metahumans could potentially have on the universe. And obviously they were like over analyzing everything, and obviously the metahumans ended up saving the day and ended up kind of causing a lot of pain to the Dominators. It was cool seeing that, and then having the Dominator that the team saved, and seeing them interact with him in the present day, considering they saved him in the past, and he was the one Dominator that was one they were able to communicate with. I thought that was really cool to have, especially in a villain villains who we thought were just like nameless villains that were just the reason for the crossover happening. And I really liked how just action-packed this episode was towards the end. And seeing all the different heroes fighting the Dominators between, Diggle, Flash, Green Arrow, all the legends, Supergirl. And I thought Supergirl was utilized really, really, really well in this episode. When she had, that talk with Oliver that made her so angry, he told her to stay back. And then by the end of the episode, she has some pull with like the new female president. And I think it's so cool that in the show they're bringing in a woman president who's a woman of color, considering America just elected a racist bigot. I think it's cool having that in the show, because in Supergirl they have Linda Carter as their female president, and for a second I thought they were going to bring in Linda Carter as this Earth's president, but I think it is cool nonetheless that they brought in a woman of color to be the president, especially with everything that's going on in the real world. I thought that was a pretty cool little thing to have. But I did like Kara having some pull at the end, and then when she was mentioning starting up the DEO on this Earth, and that they should send that agent to Antarctica or whatever. I thought that was kind of funny. But I did like the way Supergirl was used throughout this episode in the Flash crossover. She was barely used in the Arrow episode of the crossover. She had some cool scenes and stuff, but nothing too like significant, because again it was more of an Arrow episode than it was a crossover episode. I mean, if you guys saw my review of that episode, you guys know like I didn't have much of a problem with that. And one thing I did like, how again continuing this whole story that started throughout the entire crossover, I did like seeing, because of the revelation that Barry's, messing up of the timeline created a problem with him and Cisco, because, Barry creating Flashpoint resulted in the death of Cisco's brother. And this was the episode where, because they saved the Dominator, that history was slightly altered. And Cisco, I thought it was a little bit of abrupt, and it wasn't the most, I don't think it was executed the best, but I'm glad we finally got to see Cisco finally come to an understanding of what Barry went through when he did create Flashpoint. And he was only trying to save the day. He wasn't trying to change history. I mean, he wasn't trying to obviously do anything intentionally to harm anyone. So that's where like history's changed, because he was trying to save someone or save others, and that's where like Cisco finally had an understanding. And it's just nice that they didn't have that whole drama between him and Barry last too long. So it lasted about a week. but I'm definitely happy that they were able to wrap it up, and that it wasn't gonna be this thing that the team dwelled on for like weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'm glad they were able to wrap it up within this crossover because it made for a better story overall. Because again, you give the characters a second to breathe and to make it feel like a real story, that it's not just like surface level, like, oh, superheroes teaming up and everything's okay. Like, there is more going on because you have things that were going on before the crossover even started. So that's where, like, I'm glad they were able to wrap things up within the crossover and make it an interesting story and give characters good character moments. And seeing him and Felicity, I feel like Felicity Smoke in these last few episodes, except for that stupid line of her going, best team up ever, that they had to put in every single stupid promo. Okay, I'm sorry, the promos were fine. I hated that line. It's just, if you guys watched my past reviews of Arrow from previous seasons, you guys know I have a huge problem with Felicity as a character. That being said, I did like how minimally she was used throughout this crossover, and she kind of felt like more or less. That's what I have liked about these crossovers, is that like Felicity feels like the Felicity I came to know and appreciate in the first couple seasons of Arrow, where she wasn't making, except for that stupid line in the first episode of the Flash crossover. I did like her and her dynamic with Cisco throughout this episode, and seeing like the two of them geek out over certain things in this episode, and having her kind of be the one to remind Cisco that, you know, Barry is his best friend and he can't dwell on things forever, and everyone makes mistakes, and her being the one to kind of remind him of the fact that, you know, him and Barry are friends, and he has to fix their relationship at some point. So I did appreciate her being there for that reason. What else? And I did like how the way the episode wrapped up, like with, you know, the female president acknowledging the team, and of course saying that this stuff to be kept secret, which kind of sucks because you would want like the whole world to know, especially since they're just like invaded, that, you know, all these heroes are here to protect them. I do think it's cool that like the world is kind of like acknowledging these heroes instead of just on like a city level, more on a global level, and I think it's really cool seeing that. And seeing how much of the Hall of Justice was featured throughout this crossover. I wish they would have said something like, this will be the place where we all meet up. Like, I wish they would have made more reference to the fact that it was the Hall of Justice. It wasn't just some empty Air Force hangar or whatever it was, or Star Labs hangar. I do wish that they kind of made that as the point of, like, if they ever need to come back together again, that's where they meet up. I wish that they did something like that, since they showed the Hall of Justice so many times throughout this crossover, even though they didn't call it that. As a fan, of course, of Super Friends and all that stuff, seeing the Hall of Justice was really, really cool. Finally seeing it in live action again, but finally seeing it, period. I really did like seeing that. And overall, I thought this crossover was a hell of a lot of fun. There's some things I wish they would have brought up, like character-wise, but I understand there was a packed set of episodes. Like in this episode, I wish they would have like addressed the fact that, you know, Maya is, you know, Mari McCabe's grandma, and that like the team doesn't recognize her, and I wish there would have been more of that. I understand there's a threat and they couldn't exactly focus on that, but I do wish that they had brought up the fact that, hey, there's another Vixen and it's not Mari McCabe, and that's where it's like, okay, you could, like, I wish that they could have some sort of explanation for that. And yeah, again, it's just little things that I wish I could have seen more of. Like, I wish I could have seen a couple more Arrow characters, a couple more Flash characters. But I understand, I guess, because as they were filming this crossover, they were also filming the following week's episode of their respective shows. That's why certain characters and actors weren't available at the time, which is fine and understandable to a point. But I still wish, just as a fan, because I wanted to see all these characters, I wish we could have seen a little more of them. But no, I'm still happy nonetheless. I'm glad the show wrapped up the way it did, because especially by the end, you had like, you know, Oliver and Sarah have the moments of like this whole thing kind of started with the two of them, and it did. Even though like we all kind of forget that like Sarah was one of the first vigilantes in this entire universe, at least as far as like what the audience has seen. That her and Oliver having that moment of like this whole thing started with us, and kind of funny to see where things ended up. I thought that was a cool scene for the two of them to have, since they haven't really had a chance to really interact one-on-one with each other in a really, really long time. So it was cool seeing them interact like that, and then having Oliver and Barry have that moment too when they're drinking, and they're kind of talking about how the fact that they're both able to see a somewhat normal version of their lives, and seeing how that's like affected their psyche. And even though they felt like they were in a normal life, that it didn't feel full to them, and that like their lives in the real world are full. And it was a good thing to have the episode end on. So with that being said, I think that's gonna be it for me. What do you guys think of this crossover? What were your guys' favorite moments? Sound your thoughts in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for every other DC TV show I will be reviewing. Next week's mid-season finale week, so I'm reviewing all the DC TV shows on the CW, and including Arrow. I've decided I'm going to go back to Arrow, and hopefully it doesn't disappoint me like it has in the last couple seasons. You guys should check out all my movie reviews and trailer reviews that I've uploaded on my channel, and as well as any other video I post as well. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, have a good one.